Dead Sea Scrolls were found, um, as the name implies, near the Dead Sea in a bunch of caves. And they were found when some teenage boys who were shepherds threw a rock in a cave and they heard something break, and they went in and they found it broke a pot. And inside the pot were some scrolls. And what's interesting is that there's kind of an adventure after that that is a little bit like an Indiana Jones movie. The kids thought they were kind of neat, so they took them home.
Oh.
And they showed them to people and took them to the market and tried to sell them to somebody for money, and nobody said that they're probably not worth anything. So they took pieces of them and put them on the wall.
Oh,
And finally, they showed them to somebody and says, well, you know, that could be important. Why don't we go talk to this priest over here or something? And so they wound up months and months after they had been discovered, somebody finally said, well, this might be something, we'll have to take care of them. What's amazing is these things being 2,000 years old and dried out were incredibly fragile. And it's a miracle that anything survived that.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, that was kind of the story.
Wow.
So they were found in these caves, and it turns out they include the earliest known surviving manuscripts of works included in the Hebrew Bible, every book except Esther. They were written in Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, and some early languages on parchment, papyrus, and bronze. And some of the parchment was animal-based. There was sheepskins and cattle hides and things like that. And they've been dated with various techniques to between 408 BC and 318 AD. And most of them have been written, believed to have been written well before 100 BC. And they were generated, we believe, by an ancient Jewish sect called the Essenes. The Essenes were turned off by what they saw as corruption in the church in Jerusalem, and they went off and formed their own enclave of believers, and they spent their time copying holy texts and talking about it, basically. So.
For centuries, the rabbis of Israel reflected on the mysteries of what Isaiah had foreseen. Then, just as the modern nation of Israel was being reborn, the prophecies of Isaiah resurfaced. Ancient copies of the prophet, dated 100 years or more before the Christian era, were discovered at the lowest spot on earth, near the Dead Sea.
So the Dead Sea Scrolls are ancient Jewish manuscripts discovered between 47 and 56 in 11 caves in the area of Qumran. Qumran is located on the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea, 30 kilometers east from Jerusalem.
This was one of the greatest and most important discoveries of antiquities ever made.
Here, the air is bone dry, perfect for preserving and hiding the manuscripts of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Many scholars identify what remains of the Qumran community with a Jewish sect called the Essenes. Seeing the priesthood and temple worship of Jerusalem as being corrupted, the Essenes broke from mainstream Judaism and retreated here to seek the Lord in the wilderness.
It seems that the book of Isaiah was among the most popular and most admired books for the sect which was living at Qumran during Second Temple period.
And of the book of Isaiah, we have 21 copies. Isaiah is the most popular prophet among the Dead Sea Scrolls. He's the oft-quoted prophet in all the scrolls. And it's a fact that out of the 220 biblical copies in Qumran, the only full copy is the Great Isaiah Scroll discovered in Cave 1 in 47. So it's very obvious that must be a reason, because Isaiah is a key prophet in Qumran.
The Essenes carefully copied biblical texts and community documents. Their desert library reflected the belief that they were living in the times of Israel's long-awaited Messiah.
So there's quite a bit known about the Essenes. They were very strict, Torah observant, Messianic related Jewish sect. They called themselves the followers of the teacher of righteousness. And they left Jerusalem to protest, what they saw as the corruption in the church. And they basically lived a monastic life in Qumran Bay. The Romans destroyed it when they were in the area to attack Jerusalem. They actually just destroyed Qumran Bay first. And it's believed that they hid their scrolls in the caves to keep them out of the hands of the Romans so they wouldn't be destroyed. And the scrolls are basically what is left of a community library. They spent their time copying these scrolls and putting them into libraries that other people could take out and read, basically. And the variations in the handwriting that they've analyzed so far, so there were probably at least 500 people who were copying these manuscripts, which is amazing. So here's a picture of Genesis 1 scroll. It's in Hebrew. It's one of the oldest of the Hebrews, of the scrolls in there, and it basically begins as we know it. In the beginning, God created, and it goes on very consistent with what we know. So, as I was saying, the discovery of the scrolls advanced the time frame at which we had the earliest known copies of the Bible by roughly 1,000 years, and pretty significant. And so there's been a lot of effort spent comparing what the Dead Sea Scrolls say with the current versions of the Bible. And one of the interesting things is the rules that were followed to copy holy texts or sacred texts. These were some of the early rules that were in place in Israel at that time. They were used for copying parts of the Bible or whatever. There actually were 17. I've listed 12. We'll go through them. Some of the ones that I didn't list was they had to be ceremonially clean. They had to be in a ceremonially clean place, and various things. So, but they were very meticulous. So they start with 1. Every skin had to contain a certain number of columns equal throughout the entire codex. So these things were made of individual pages, and the pages together combined the codex. So all the pages had to be uniform in their width. The length of each column, now Hebrew goes from the back to the front and up and down. The length of each column must not extend over less than 48 or more than 60 lines. And the breadth must consist of 30 letters. So the whole copy must be first lined, and if 3 words be written without a line, it's worthless. They have to throw it away. If the ink had to be black, not red, not green, or any other color, it had to be prepared according to a definite formula. So they had a very specific formula for the ink. An authentic copy must be the exemplar from which the transcriber ought not in the least to deviate. So they had to have the original right in front of them. No word or letter, not even a yod, must be written from memory, the scribe not having looked at the codex before him. So they had to copy, well, looking at it letter for letter, word for word.
What's yod?
Yod is a punctuation mark, basically. Between every consonant, the space of a hair or thread must intervene. Between every parasha or section, the breadth of 9 consonants. Between every book, 3 lines must intervene. The 5th book of Moses must terminate exactly with a line, but the rest did not need to do so. Copyists must not begin to write the name of God with a pen newly dipped in ink. They didn't want it to smear. Should a king address him while he's writing the name of the Lord, he must take no notice of him. If a sheet of parchment had one mistake, the sheet was condemned. If there were 3 mistakes on any page, the whole document was condemned. And every scroll had to be checked within 30 days of its writing, or it was considered unholy. So they put a great emphasis on being absolutely accurate. So when you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls with the current understanding of current versions, they're identical to modern Hebrew Bible, 95% of the instances. The 5% variations are obvious slips of a pen or variations in spelling change from time to time. In Isaiah 53, which we're going to talk about next week, which is really important in terms of prophecies about Jesus and what he would go through on the cross. Only 17 letters out of a whole chapter are in question. 10 are only matters of spelling. 4 are minor stylistic changes, and 3 letters are the word light, which are added to verse, which didn't really change the meaning. So that's over a span of 1,200 years. So the meaning has been copied, captured extremely well.
Oh my goodness.
So that really shows that over a period of over 1,000 years, there was basically no variations. And that, a lot of present-day critics say, well, the Bible was written 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, and it's been changed by so many people, it doesn't say what it used to say. Well, that's just not true. So here are some of the things. Here's what they had in Qumran Bay. Again, it was a lending library. The number of manuscripts that they found are followed, are shown here in parentheses. So they found 36 manuscripts of Psalms. Deuteronomy was second. Isaiah was third, with 21 copies of Isaiah. And then they had some books that were not in our Bible, Enoch and Jude, and then Exodus and Jubilees and Genesis. And so it's pretty amazing, and again, some of the key books are there. Ezekiel with its prophecies, and 1st and 2nd Samuel are there. So pretty amazing. Now it's interesting to look at other texts and the amount of time that it took to have a documented copy, and how long we've had it, and how many copies there are. So if you start with some of the Greeks, Astrophanes, he was writing in 400 BC. The oldest copy we have is from 900 AD, so it's 1,300 years, and there's a few, 45 copies. Aristotle, pretty much the same, 1,450 years interval between when he lived and the oldest copy we have, and there's 5 of those old copies. Then it goes on and on down like that. Then you get to the Old Testament, and now the oldest copy we have now is 250 BC roughly, and the average time between when something that was written and when we have the oldest copy we have, is 200 to 400 years of elapsed time. We have 5,000 copies of some of those. And the New Testament is, the time lapse is less than 50 years or less, and we have many, many copies of that. So it just, you know, there's more study and authentication going into the books of the Bible than just about any other topic. My computer's acting up today, I'm sorry. Well, that's the end of that, and it's a little bit late to start on the next topics, so we'll leave that for next time.